Folks, welcome to the third episode of Small Talk Sports. I am here once again with sad Warriors fan Wyatt Wells.
Even sadder today, Logan, because I just got a notification on my phone that Draymond Green is out tonight against the Dallas Mavericks. And if I wasn't already worried that we were going to lose, that is all but confirmed now.
The Draymond has not mattered, so...
Right heel soreness is a very serious...
Oh, okay. All right. We have a lot to go over today, including the college football rankings shakeup from a wild Saturday. We have MVP races to talk about in football and basketball. And as always, we will go over our weekend's picks. So unfortunately, starting quarterback for Alabama, Tua, Saturday, suffered a season-ending hip injury, a dislocated hip, along with a broken nose, which is making him out for the rest of the year. This is coming as they were up 35-7. Why? First of all, first question, why was he in the game?
Well, a lot of people who weren't really watching the game or just paying attention can realistically, question Saban's decision. Up 35-7 against a team that arguably I personally wouldn't have played Tua at all. I would have had him rest for 2 weeks and get ready for Auburn because you still have a chance to make the playoff. I mean, even with that loss to LSU. So they were, what Saban decided he was telling the media was that he was trying to get Tua in literally last series of the game before half, trying to work on a 2-minute situation. He threw that pick in the LSU game that really swung momentum for him, and they wanted to get some more in-game reps. Sadly, you can't predict what's going to happen on the field, and they actually got something way worse than they were hoping for.
And this is coming after Alabama loses to LSU the week prior. They're still ranked 5 in the college football rankings. Is there still a chance Alabama can still get in?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's Alabama we're talking about here. As much as I hate to say it, there is a narrative that Alabama is better than the majority of the teams in the country, and why that can be argued pretty respectively. This season's a bit different. This is not the same Alabama defense that has been dominating opponents in the past 4 or 5 years. This is not the same offense anymore with Tua gone. You got Mac Jones coming in now. Now, he's no slouch, 4-star quarterback, but, I mean, there's a dramatic drop-off in talent there. They still have all their other players. I mean, this is not just Tua's team. So there's still a chance. I mean, they're at that 5 spot. And Georgia and LSU have to play later, and Georgia is going to get booted out possibly.
But they still got Auburn in the Iron Bowl, which with that game, it never matters who's got the better record. It's the same game every year, and it's always incredibly close. These two teams know each other better than probably any 2 college football teams do.
Probably, yeah. I mean, you could argue that. I mean, and just to go back, about 3 minutes remaining until halftime. It's just, you hate to see that for such a tremendous player, especially of that caliber. And if I was a betting man, I don't think he returns to Alabama next season.
That was my next question. So the problem is that Tua was probably going to be the first pick of next year's draft. Now there's no way.
I'd argue that after that LSU game, that Tua dropped even being healthy, and Joe Burrow replaced him there.
The difference between getting drafted number 1, or at least in the top 3, versus low end is probably $20 million in the next 4 years.
Right.
So is it almost worth it for Tua to stay in college 1 more year, go into a draft class that isn't so offensively dominated?
I'm not sure, because you're getting Trevor Lawrence in that next draft class.
From the Clemson fan himself, talking about Trevor Lawrence.
Well, considering that many national pundits considered him the number 1 overall pick, and GMs quoted that last season, so it's not just bias here.
So we had a big weekend in college football. Georgia beats Auburn 21-14. Iowa beats unbeaten Minnesota 23-19.
Yeah, and you shouldn't sound too surprised on that one. I was going back and forth with that pick last week. I did go with Minnesota because I thought they were a better team, but you can't go into Iowa, especially in a night game, and expect to get out fine. Ohio State learned that the hard way. Michigan learned that the hard way. And Minnesota is just one of the more recent teams to befall that.
And Oklahoma down 100 points? 150 points? Some stupid...
28-3, which is now almost confirmed to be the worst lead ever in any sport.
So Oklahoma beats Baylor. So from those 3 games, with Minnesota losing, with Baylor losing, And with Auburn losing, what's the biggest takeaway in college football, especially rankings-wise, as we head closer to the college football playoff?
Wasn't too much shakeup. Oklahoma still has a chance. They are on the outside looking in, and they do have some things that have to go their way. Right now, their biggest competition is Alabama and Oregon, most likely, assuming Oregon wins out in the Pac-12 championship game against Utah, who is no slouch of their own. But they just haven't. The committee uses the eye test frequently in some of these ways to explain why they rank teams the way they do. If that's the same for Oklahoma, that's not good at all for the Sooners. Oklahoma trailed Kansas State 48-23 before rallying in a 48-41 loss. That was their big loss of the season, which a lot of people didn't expect. The Sooners nearly blew a 42-21 lead in a 42-41 win against Iowa State, where they had to stop the two-point conversion, which the quarterback had no business throwing to the wide receiver. He was plenty covered, but they had a chance to lose that game too. And then, earlier this weekend, this is like 3 straight weeks, almost, 28-3 at halftime to Baylor. Baylor is doing whatever they want to do to this Oklahoma defense. Now, credit to Jalen Hurts. Fantastic job with this offense, putting it on his back, rallying for one of the best comeback wins in Oklahoma history. But, man, it just, when you look at the Sooners, and especially against this kind, I mean, what would an Alabama or an LSU or an Ohio State or a Clemson do against this defense? That's the big issue right there.
But here's where I'm saying. So right now we have the 3 big dogs. We have LSU, Ohio State, and Clemson. And barring any big losses, those 3 teams are usually going to get in. So we got to talk about that last spot. And the difference between this year than the rest of the years, every team has a bad loss. Even Georgia, the team that's in the top 4 right now.
Georgia has probably the worst loss of any playoff team in history of the playoff. Let's just go, because not a lot of people talk about this when they mention the South Carolina loss. This was a team that was, first of all, South Carolina just got, I believe, their 5th win. Yes, they are 4-7 overall, so didn't even get their 5th win. Got their 4th win. They've lost to Tennessee. They've lost to some pretty bad teams. But this was a home game for Georgia. South Carolina was down to their not 2nd string quarterback, who Ryan Helinski had been playing for the entire year, and an injured Jake Bentley. But your 3rd string quarterback on the road, and that offense just had a field day with the Georgia secondary. So this was a historically bad loss, especially when the spread was, I believe, over 20. So
It was, I think it was like 25 or 26. It was something ridiculous.
yeah, it was, I mean, and they should have won handily, but the committee has henceforth said that their wins against Florida, Auburn, and some other big teams offset that loss, which, when you look at it kind of like as the bigger picture, you can kind of see that, but in reality, I mean, come on. Like, that's a glaring issue. And then the next week, they struggle against Kentucky, who is 5th, literally below South Carolina right now in the SEC East standing.
Well, my point is that with what would happen this weekend, with Georgia winning, with Oklahoma winning, with Minnesota end up losing, the difference between 4 and 9 right now is super close.
Oh, absolutely.
Any one of them, you could make an argument from Georgia, Alabama, Oregon, Utah, Penn State, Oklahoma. You can make an argument for any of those teams
You
being
can even
4.
argue Minnesota.
You still could.
Yeah. It's
still
a harder argument, but it is possible.
Yeah, but that hasn't happened in a lot of years.
No, and that's fantastic. It's really good. I mean, Alabama Clemson has basically been running this playoff era. I mean, everyone expects them to be in the title game year in and year out, and it's actually happened. I mean, it's one thing for people to predict it, but when it's actually happening year in and year out, I mean, this 3 times in the past 5 years or so that they have met in the national championship game, not even including the semis. So
We'll have to see. I am excited, though, for sure.
oh yeah, and this should hopefully shape up for a closer playoff. A lot of these semifinal games before the national championships have all been blowouts. I mean, the Big Ten hasn't scored a point in the playoff probably since 2014 Ohio State, when they won it all. Michigan State and Ohio State get blanked. So it's going to be some pretty close parity here. Moving on to MLB and baseball, after the Astros lost in the World Series to the Nationals earlier this year, some controversy was brought up or dug up after a couple seasons ago when the Astros did win the World Series. A little bit of cheating going on here.
For some explanation, sign stealing has always been a problem in MLB. It's very hard to, first of all, find out when someone's doing it and how to stop someone. But the Astros were caught by a whistleblower, former pitcher Mike Fiers, and helping an article where they had a system. So for people who don't know much about baseball, there's two main types of pitches. There's a fastball and there's an off-speed pitch. And being a batter in the batter's box, knowing what's coming allows you to time it a lot faster because the difference between 95 miles an hour versus 75 is massive. So what happened was that the sign would come in, and then if it was an off-speed pitch, you would hear somebody in the dugout hit a bat like that. So the player would know what was coming. Huge! This is if this ends up being true, which there is already video.
I was gonna say there is video evidence of this happening. You can hear the bat banging as the pitching is getting called.
Yeah. So there had been no sanctions yet because this is it was an article written, and now there's massive sanctions about the MLB is planning on making. They could be including taking away draft picks, the entire front office being fired, their World Series being revoked. I mean, we're talking about one of the biggest controversies in the 21st century.
And I mean, there was also that quote that the MLB is definitely doing one of the more thorough, investigations they have done in the history of the sport, and that this could be a new high for any team.
This for any team in sports.
Yeah.
Because I know a couple years ago comparing this to Deflategate, which was the controversy against the Patriots a couple years ago about slightly deflating the balls. That is minuscule.
That's nothing, yeah.
That is minuscule to the fact of blatant cheating and knowing what the pitcher is throwing to you. Mm-hmm. And now they're trying to deflect on which we'll talk more about next week if it becomes bigger. They made a proposition about cutting almost half of minor league teams, which would just be horrible anymore. So now we're going to move on to our next brand new segment. There are 3 current leagues right now going on: the NFL, the NCAA, and NBA. We are going to talk about some of the best players in that league and the MVP races in them, and we're going to start off with the NFL.
Well, right now, NFL MVP race, sadly, after last week's complete and utter embarrassment loss to the Ravens, Deshaun Watson, one of my MVP favorites, automatically has to drop out. So we now have a 3-way race with Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson, and Aaron Rodgers. Your boy.
My boy. And he's only in there because we added 3. If I'm being brutally honest, it's probably a 2-way race between Russell Wilson and Lamar Jackson currently.
I agree. Lamar Jackson is absolutely silencing all critics. People were saying that he needs to be a wide receiver in the NFL, and he completely put that notion on its head. 2,258 yards, 19-5 touchdown interception ratio, 106.3 rating, and he's rushing for 788 yards with 6 touchdowns.
So is he your pick?
Right now, I'd pick him over Russell Wilson.
My problem with picking Lamar Jackson as the MVP is that his passing stats are inflated because of 2 big games against the Bengals and the Dolphins. Granted, they're NFL teams, and that they still count. But outside of that, if you just take those 2 games away, he actually has a bottom 5 quarterback rating. He's not the best. He's an average to below average passer. And yes, he's running the ball a lot, and I'm not saying he's a bad player. But Russell Wilson is single-handedly carrying the Seattle Seahawks team. They have a very weak defense. Chris Carson isn't elite running back. They don't have a big receiver, yet they're 8-2 in the NFC West, which is arguably the hardest division in football right now. 2,700 yards. 2,700 yards, 23 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And he's still running. He has almost 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. The dude has been an absolute efficient machine. The problem with Russell Wilson has always been is that his passing stats have never been high. He relies on his running backs and the run game way too much. This year he's putting up Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes numbers. I don't see how you can take a Seahawks team that shouldn't even be in the playoffs, but yet they're an 8-2, probably the number one wild card team, it's Russell Wilson's to lose right now.
All right. The way I just look at Lamar Jackson, you have both. Like with Russell, yes, he's a better passer, but he's still a great runner. But Lamar has a extremely wide gap on that. I mean, almost 1,000. He probably is going to hit 1,000 yards by the end of the season. So from just the combination of both passing and running, that's why I'm going with Lamar. Plus, he owns probably the best win of the season right now against that Patriots team.
True. My last argument will be it's the most valuable award. The Ravens have a great defense. They have a great run game. They have a lot of things that are great for them. And if the Lamar Jackson wasn't the quarterback, they would still be a playoff team. If Russell Wilson wasn't on that Seahawks team, they may be looking at getting a Joe Burrow or a Tua in next year's draft.
I'm just glad we're seeing a really close and fantastic MVP race.
I agree. Now to talk about a race that isn't close, we have the Heisman race.
Yes.
We have two candidates, pretty much, Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts. Joe Burrow is the quarterback for LSU, who has 3,600 yards and 38 touchdowns, while Jalen Hurts is the quarterback for Oklahoma, who has 3,000 yards, but has 1,000 rushing already with 43 total rushing and passing touchdowns. Who's your pick for Heisman right now?
Right now, I'm going to say Joe Burrow, kind of going with the majority. They've played the best schedule to date right now. He's beaten quality teams. He beat Alabama at home, finally ending an 8-year drought for LSU. He's just taken this, the way they've taken this offense is night and day. It's not even night and day. It's Earth and Venus. It's completely different. And I think just the impact he has had, like you said, most valuable player. LSU has struggled with finding good quarterbacks probably since Zach Mettenberger had a decent quarterback. And he's taken this team to a whole new level.
In 2017, Baker Mayfield won the Heisman. In 2018, Kyler Murray won the Heisman. Both quarterbacks went to Oklahoma. I am thinking there's going to be a three-peat. 3 straight years of Oklahoma quarterbacks winning Heisman. Because the Heisman has always been a who puts up the best stats award. And right now, Jalen Hurts is putting up stats that haven't been seen since, RG3. Not only is he passing efficiently with bear in mind, 209 quarterback rating, 28 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, he's going to run for almost 1,500 yards this year and 20 touchdowns. That is unheard of in any sport. And Oklahoma still might make the playoff. If Oklahoma makes the playoff, there is no doubt in my mind that it's 100% that Jalen Hurts wins the Heisman.
There's just a difference. You've got one quarterback that's, in charge of the number 1 team in the country, and one quarterback who's in charge of the number 9 team in the country who lost to Kansas State, almost lost to Iowa State, and was getting blown out by Baylor in the second half.
But Lamar won it with Louisville, and they weren't a great team. They value stats more than they do ranking.
They do value stats, but I think just how the media has portrayed this, early on in the season, I would have said this is Jalen Hurts to lose, with just all the publicity that he was getting, with those after-game workouts. It seemed like he was a lock. But I just think since this team has regressed overall, that it's Joe Burrow's. Plus, it's an SEC quarterback. How often are you going to get that?
And for 30 seconds, super quickly, which running back versus Jonathan Taylor and Travis Etienne? Jonathan Taylor goes to Wisconsin. Travis Etienne goes to Clemson. Which one's going to get a Heisman invitation?
Buddy, we've been arguing about this for a long time, and you say 30 seconds? I don't think that's going to be enough time for this debate.
Quickly, just go ahead.
Travis Etienne, 8.9 yards per carry. 45 less rushing yards than Taylor, I'll give you that. But on 71 fewer carries. Has ran 4 times in the fourth quarter at all this season. His longest run is a 90-yard touchdown run that actually broke Clemson's career touchdown record. 25 catches, 252 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's 1 for 1 on passing.
Oh my God! Yards. That is incredible.
51 total touchdowns in his career. Right now, 153 attempts, 1,335 yards, 14 touchdowns, and crazy 8.7 yards per carry. And let's keep in mind, he doesn't even play in the second half. He hardly plays in the first half when you have Trevor Lawrence and all those wide receivers, plus a running back by committee, which is how Dabo likes to do it to keep his team fresh for later on in the playoff with Lynn J. Dixon, Ches Malusi, and Darian Rencher. Jonathan Taylor may be a more complete back. Travis Etienne's the best back.
Well, looking at these stats, blew my mind first of all for Etienne because I thought Etienne was a receiving back. Absolutely, he only had.
No, he's a running back.
But Jonathan Taylor, my problem with Jonathan is that here's the thing: who's the quarterback for Clemson?
Trevor Lawrence.
When is he getting drafted next year or 2 years?
Most likely number 1.
Who's the Badgers quarterback?
I remember it from the Ohio State game.
Jack
which
Cohen.
you also have not still paid me for.
Anyway, Jack Cohen is the quarterback. Jack Cohen's the quarterback. Jack Cohen is terrible. Jack Cohen will be the quarterback of the Badgers next year. Every single down, the defense knows that we're giving it to Jonathan Taylor. They give us 8-man boxes, while Travis Etienne gets 6-man boxes. When it's 3rd and 1, you're not throwing the ball. You're giving the ball to Jonathan Taylor. And he still gets it done. He is breaking records for the Badgers, which we've had running backs like Monte Ball, Robert Dane, and Melvin Gordon. Some of the best running backs in college football. There's no way that Jonathan Taylor doesn't get an invite. And he will probably get drafted in the top 15 next year.
You know, you're right. You know, you guys don't have a good quarterback. You most likely have a better offensive line than we do, which I don't buy your excuse there for the defense. Let's see who you've played this season. South Florida.
Here we go.
Oh boy, South Florida, that's a pretty good defense. Central Michigan, the Chippewas, they're pretty deadly on the defensive end. Michigan, before they were good, keep in mind that before they were on their thing. Northwestern, Kent State, my lord. Michigan State, who you blanked. Illinois, who you lost to, by the way. Ohio State, Iowa, good defense there, no slouch. Nebraska, oh man. Purdue, I mean, best 4-6 team in the country, am I right? And then finally you end it with Minnesota. So you want to keep talking about the defenses that have been loading the box on Jonathan Taylor? Come on, man.
Let's move on. Okay, let's move on. We have one more league to talk about, and that's the NBA. Now, the NBA had just started this year, only a few games in, but there have been some outrageous candidates already for MVP. We have Luka Doncic, who's averaging 29.5 points. We have Giannis Antetokounmpo, say that name twice, averaging 30. And we have crazy James Harden, averaging 40 points right now. If you had to pick an early favorite, I know we're early in the season, a lot of things can change. Who's your favorite right now?
Right now, James Harden. Luka, on his own, fantastic season he's having. I mean, people are comparing him to young LeBron James. I mean, this kid has been going off. But James Harden is put in the best position to win this award, stats-wise. I mean, he's in one of the best offensive situations in the NBA. Russell Westbrook is alongside him, but he's still carrying majority of the load. Again, 39.2 points per game. This man's a scoring machine. I mean, he can average 50 over the span of a couple months if he really wanted to.
I could go on for hours about how I hate James Harden. I think his stats are completely overflated. But let me just talk about a few super quickly. Right now, James Harden is shooting 26 shots a game.
I'm sorry, we have to break it real quick. Ben Simmons just hit a three-pointer.
No way! Are we live recording? Ben Simmons hit his first career three? Oh my god! Yes! 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 He did it! He fucking did it! Yes! I am sorry. He did it! This is incredible. I'm sorry. Sorry, Giannis. Sorry, James Harden. Ben Simmons is the MVP of this league. You want
Ben Simmons? Lock it in.
You want to talk about a MVP candidate? You want to talk about a complete player? Ben Simmons can do it from everywhere along the floor. He can shoot it in the paint. He can shoot it on the right side of the paint. He can shoot it on the left side of the paint. And you know what he can also do? He can make 1 3-pointer a year. We did it. We did it. That's our show. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm joking. It's Giannis. I'm going to be quick about this. Giannis is shooting 58%, 32% from 3. James Harden is shooting 42%, 32% from 3. Notice how James Harden and Giannis are shooting the same percentage from 3. Giannis is taking 19 shots. Harden is taking 26. Giannis is shooting 11 free throws a game. Harden is shooting 15. It's usage. It'll come down to the end of the year who has the better record, but right now Giannis is killing it right now.
All right, moving on to our final segment of the day, our weekend picks. Last week I went 3-2. Logan went 2-3. I regret the Minnesota-Iowa pick, or else I would have been 4-2 because I don't know why I didn't do that.
4-1, Wyatt.
Whatever. But still. Let's get into our picks today. First up, Indianapolis Colts 6-4 versus the Houston Texans, another 6-4 team. Logan, Thursday at 8:15 on Fox. This is a must-win game for the Texans. Who do you have?
I'm sorry, I can't get over that Ben Simmons at a 3. I'm still I just saw the video. It's the worst 3 ever. When Andrew Luck retired at the beginning of the year, everyone counted the Colts out, that they had no chance. But Jacoby Brissett is a solid quarterback. And he's played really well for them. Granted, he's been out the last couple games with injury, but with him coming back, with Hilton coming back, against the Texans defense that's lost Javanian Clowney and J.J. Watt, I think the Colts take this one.
Well, I really hope that my next pick doesn't jinx us like it did in the Ravens game. But I'm going to go with the Texans. This is a must-win for Deshaun and the Texans. This is a game that's most likely going to decide the AFC South. Both teams are tied for first in their league. Houston's coming off again an embarrassing loss to Lamar and the Ravens, 41-7. I will still live with that. Colts took game 1, dominated in dominating fashion, but T.Y. Hilton is questionable for this game. And as everyone knows, T.Y. Hilton is the Texan slayer. So with T.Y. questionable, doubtful that he'll play, I'm going to go with the Texans on this one.
Our second game is in the NBA on Friday night at 10:30 on ESPN. We have the 2 best teams in the West, the Houston Rockets versus the Los Angeles Clippers. This is going to be the first game that Kawhi Leonard and Paul George play at the same time.
Who do you got?
I'm excited for this one. I'm so glad that it's at 10:30. Thank you, West Coast time, because I'm going to get out of my shift right at 11, so I'll be able to catch most of the second half.
Granted, the game's going to end at 1 a.m. But...
Hey, I'm all for it, though. I'm gonna go with the Clippers on this one. Paul George and Kawhi suit up together for the first time. Should be good to go. Harden and Westbrook are an offensive sensation. There is no denying that, but defense wins games. And it also helps that Kawhi and Paul George can also score at will. So with a combination of both players being able to play solid defensively, along with Patrick Beverley and that defensive team in the Clippers, I'm gonna go with the Clippers.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said everything that needs to be said. This Clippers team with Kawhi and Paul George is going to be pretty much unstoppable. And at home, I don't see how the Rockets can match with them. Because they don't have guys that can guard them. They have P.J. Tucker, and that's about it. What, they're going to put James Harden on one of them? I don't see it going down.
And our next game, this is College Game Day and a big noon Saturday on Fox. Penn State, number 8, 8-2. Actually, no, I'm reading the wrong thing. Penn State, 9-1. And Ohio State, number 2 team in the country at 10-0. Logan, who do you think is going to win?
Does Ohio State have Chase Young this game?
They do.
Chase Young is the difference maker. Chase Young is everything. Ohio State wins this game easily. Penn State is the most overhyped team. They have done nothing this year.
Especially the fact that they're ranked above Minnesota right now in the playoff rankings is absurd. It's almost speaking to brand bias more so than what your team has done.
If I'm being honest, Penn State has not had a quality win this year. They don't have a player that's going to be in the first round next year. I don't get the ranking. I don't get how this is going to be a close game. I think Ohio State's going to blow.
Keep in mind, this was the number 4 team in the initial rankings for college football playoff. Yes.
You don't know anything.
But I agree. Ohio State, one of the most complete teams in the country. It's at the shoe. There's no Saquon Barkley, no Trace McSorley for Penn State. Chase Young's coming off that 2-game suspension. It's going to be another blowout.
Probably the most important game of the weekend, and especially for the NFL. On Sunday Night Football, we have the Green Bay Packers versus the San Francisco 49ers. The top 2 teams in the NFC. This is going to be a huge game for tie-breaking scenarios, especially for the bye. Aaron Rodgers versus Jimmy Garoppolo. Who do you got?
I'm going with San Francisco here. I'm sticking to my mantra, the defense wins games. This defense for San Francisco is unreal. One of the best in the NFL, if not the best. They've been holding opponents to under 200 yards in both passing and rushing. It's a home game in LA. Nick Bosa is getting after that quarterback. 7 sacks already this season and a pick. I think that they can frustrate Aaron Rodgers and get out with a W.
Don't forget that the Packers have a rejuiced defense this year. The defense is playing really, really well. They've limited opponents to under 30 points almost every game. They haven't had that big blow-up game. And so these two teams are very similar. Similar wide receiving cores, similar offensive line, similar defenses. So when it comes down to that, there's only one thing I look at as Wyatt spills his water everywhere.
Yes.
Who's got the better quarterback?
Aaron Rodgers, obviously.
Aaron Rodgers wins football games by himself. I think this is going to be a very close game. I think this is going to be a very exciting game. But don't be shocked if the 49ers are up by like 3 or 4 points with 2 minutes left and Aaron Rodgers has the ball.
Yeah, you get in that situation, I'd have to go with the Packers on that one too.
But you're picking the 49ers.
Oh, I'm picking the 49ers, but in that situation, I would go with the Packers.
And our final game on Monday Night Football, we have the Baltimore Ravens versus the Los Angeles Rams. A possible Super Bowl matchup we thought to start the year off, but since the Rams have been struggling, it may not look that way. Who do you got, Wyatt?
I'm going to go with the Ravens. Lamar Jackson, Action Jackson, the GOAT. Scratch that, not the GOAT. Rams have a good run defense. It is a home game. But after last week, I'm not going to bet against that Ravens offense or that Ravens defense. They've got 3 former Heisman winners in their backfield. Mark Ingram, RG3, and Lamar Jackson. When can you say that a team has had 3 former Heisman winners in the same position group? I can't think of anything. I'm going with the Ravens in this one.
Yeah, I mean, Los Angeles Rams barely beat last Sunday night, they barely beat the Chicago Bears with the quarterback tandem of Mitch Trubisky and Chase Daniel. They look like a completely different team than the first half of last year. We mentioned it last week. After that Chiefs game, the blow-up game, one of the best games we've ever seen, we haven't seen that Los Angeles Rams offense pop. And against a Ravens defense on Monday Night Football, I don't think it's going to happen. And their defense has not been the same. I think Lamar cooks this defense.
Also, before we wrap this up, just before the comments come at me, I did say LA, talking about San Francisco. It's my bad. It's at San Francisco.
I was going to cut it out, but now that you said that.
I mean, I'll own up to my mistake. So,
I love it.
Well, folks, that was the end of our 3rd episode. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. We would love to read them. We would love to answer any questions you may have. For Wyatt Wells, I'm Logan Windsor. Thank you so much.
See ya.